I immediately felt real jealousy and tried unsuccessfully not to show it. My daughter looked at me with a pitying expression on her face. She's going on a date with you, you idiot. It's about time you two went on a proper date. I've already made reservations, so call her now and ask her out properly, holding out her phone to me. What if she doesn't want to go on a date with me? We're just friends after all. I don't want her to feel awkward. How you managed to be smart enough to graduate from university is beyond me. Call her now. I called, and Sophie, judging by the sound of my voice, was absolutely thrilled and immediately agreed. Somehow I got the feeling that it wasn't a surprise. It took me 3 tries that night before my girls were satisfied that I was appropriately dressed for dinner. Just as I was about to leave, Callie and Tom walked in. In response to my perplexed look, Lauren said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that they'll be spending the night here tonight, so don't worry about coming home late or not at all if you want." She smiled and handed me an already packed overnight bag. All of our children were obviously involved in a determined plot. When I arrived, Sophie met me at the door. Oh my God. She looked absolutely amazing. Well, say something, Alan. I can't. I have no words. Do you like it? She asked, twisting around herself. Oh, much more than like it, Sophie. I had the best dinner of my life, and we had a wonderful time in each other's company. At the end of the evening, as we walked up to the front door of her house, I said, "I know our children have arranged for me to stay the night, but you don't have to." She said, "Sure, I'm counting on you to stay," and led me inside and into her bedroom. I wasn't going to argue with that. We were a little shy and hesitant at first. I let out all my mental frustrations and felt like I had died and gone to heaven. The next morning, we heard the sound of lots of feet on the stairs, voices outside, and a knock on the bedroom door, which then opened. Lauren poked her head inside. "Good morning, you two. It's almost 10 and we got tired of waiting, so we came in. Breakfast will be ready downstairs in 20 minutes. Oh, and I'd ask if you had a good evening, but judging by the look on your face, there's no need." She grinned. Laughter was heard outside the door, and they all departed. How did we manage to get such a wonderful group of children, Sophie? The breakfast they made was delicious, and it was wonderful to spend it as a family. Later at home, I tried to justify myself to my girls for what had happened between Sophie and me. After all, technically I had been unfaithful to their mother. They both just rolled their eyes and laughed at my awkwardness. "Dad, it's about time you were happy again. You're not married to Mom anymore anyway. She left you a long time ago. So what are all you co-conspirators up to?" Actually, we're all in agreement. Emma and I need a mother, and Cassie and Tom need a father. You and Sophie are made for each other. So everyone wins. Even if I thought it was a good idea, Sophie might not. Papa truth. Even you should be able to tell how she feels about you and what she wants. Do I have any say in the matter? No, absolutely none, Daddy. From the looks on their faces, they were thoroughly amused by all of this. Now I was truly at the mercy of my daughters. A few days later at dinner, when we were all gathered together, I announced that I intended to go house hunting the following weekend. Sophie asked what kind of house I was looking for. I wanted to be close to the beach, 2 stories with a large family room, a kids' escape room, a large backyard, and a pool. It should have at least 6 bedrooms in case my family ever grows, because you never know. Looking directly at her, I said, "I also want to make sure it will appeal to the woman I might fall head over heels in love with." Sophie stared back for a full minute, then walked over to where I was sitting, and kissed me passionately in front of the children. When we took a breath, they watched us in silence and then exploded with joy, dancing around us. I took that as a yes. After weeks of searching, we found the perfect place. We decided to buy it jointly. She used her husband's life insurance money, and I used the proceeds from the sale of my house as collateral. Everything was ready for a showdown with Amy. As Emma's 14th birthday and thus D-Day approached, Amy announced that she was leaving for 7 days to attend a sales conference on the West Coast. I later checked her email and discovered that she was actually going on vacation with her boss to celebrate their 3rd wedding anniversary on the island of Bali in Indonesia. To avoid arousing suspicion at work, they independently told everyone that they were going on vacation with their families because they were working so hard that they were neglecting them. She would leave work a day earlier than her boss and fly to Bali alone. He would fly in a day later. She would come back to work a day earlier than her boss to make the script look believable. They were getting lazy. Their gimmicks weren't up to their usual standards, as the whole thing could easily unravel if someone checked. Amy flew off to her conference and we immediately started packing and moving our things to our new home, where Sophie and the kids had moved a month earlier. The Balinese god of vengeance, if there is such a thing, was really smiling down on me. The same night Amy arrived, a gun volcano, an active volcano in Bali, began erupting in full force, spewing clouds of volcanic dust into the air. All air travel in and out of Bali was immediately suspended. Her lover stayed home and Amy was stuck in Bali alone to celebrate their wedding anniversary. This is impossible to make up. I laughed so hard I almost peed my pants. The volcano continued to erupt and all flights were still cancelled, separating the lovers. Behind the scenes, I checked her emails and messages every day to amuse myself. The lovers were not happy at camp and Amy was very resentful of Dan, as if it was his fault. Every once in a while Amy would call home and tell me how busy she was at a conference and blah blah blah. Typically, I would ask her how things were going at the hotel and ask questions about the city she was supposedly in. When I later gained remote access to her laptop, it turned out that during the phone call, she had been frantically searching the internet for information to come up with plausible answers. Meanwhile, all 6 of us were settling into our new home. I had my attorney file a separation document with the family court. I also obtained temporary custody of my girls from the court after filing their signed statements that they wanted to live with me. As the day of Amy's return approached, all flights were canceled and I wondered how Amy would handle the situation. She called me one evening and told me that she had made a lot of connections with potential big sales leads at the conference, and her boss had asked her to follow up with them right away before she returned home. I could tell she was very nervous. It's also a good thing she didn't call on the video link, or I wouldn't have been able to contain myself. I just assured Amy that we were fine and I understood. Another week went by and she was still stuck in Bali. I saw frantic emails and texts between the 2 lovers. Her boss informed everyone at work that she had to extend her vacation due to a family emergency. Her boss also called me and deeply apologized for causing Amy to be away from home for so long, but it was a big opportunity vital to the company blah blah blah. I waited for his call and was ready to answer like a dutiful husband to an important working wife. I assured him that I was fine and understood. I then innocently asked him where Amy was going. He began to quickly think of places. I read Amy his letter letting her know where she needed to be. My strategy, of course, was to make her squirm and plant the seeds of doubt in her mind that she had been discovered. I kept assuring my wife when she called that I understood everything but kept asking her about interesting places in the cities where she was staying. I knew she had researched everything beforehand, so I always asked her a few unexpected trick questions and enjoyed her attempts to give herself away. I was just playing dumb. During one call I said, "Hey Amy, did you read about those poor people who are stranded in Bali and can't get home because of the volcano?" There was a moment of silence, then I replied, "Oh yeah, but I didn't pay much attention to it on the news. One of my coworkers was stuck there for 2 weeks. Do you remember Paul Howard and his wife? We met them about 6 months ago." "Oh yes. We're working on a project together, and he has to do his part of the work remotely via the internet from his hotel in Nusa Dua. At least the Grand Hyatt isn't a bad place to be stuck." Amy's squeak was heard on the line. Sure enough, it was the hotel she was staying at. Paul hadn't even been to Bali, but she didn't know that. Immediately after the call, she'd moved to a cheap hotel on the other side of the island. She must have prayed she could get away with it. Of course, my 5 girls and son thought the whole farce was hilarious. Yes, Sophie's children were mine now. Finally, after almost 3 weeks, the volcano stopped erupting and flights from Bali resumed. Amy called me to tell me that her work was over, and she would be back on Friday afternoon. I was waiting for her from the airport at our rented and now vacant house. I had planned this meeting very carefully. When she walked in, I was sitting at the kitchen table with 2 glasses and a bottle of wine. She looked tired and very nervous. Oddly enough, for someone who had been in business for 3 weeks, she had a deep tan. I didn't bother with the usual kiss on the cheek. "Wow, you got a great tan on your business trip? Did you even have time to do anything?" She babbled something, blushing. "Sit down and have a glass of wine with me." I poured wine into my glass and took a sip. "Ellen, I'm tired. I just want to go upstairs, take a shower, and rest before dinner. I'm sorry, but we have something to discuss and it can't wait, so please sit down. The girls are staying the night at a friend's house, so we won't be disturbed." The look on Amy's face expressed genuine fear. She thought her game was finally over and I was about to lower the boom. but she didn't know how to do it. She reluctantly sat down and I poured her a glass. I'd rehearsed this speech many times and honed the apologetic face. You know things haven't been smooth between us for a long time, Amy. Do you know why? She looked startled and only mumbled a no. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Amy, but I can't sugarcoat it. The truth is that I've met another woman. I love her and I want to be with her. That's why I've decided to leave you to be with her. In an instant, a sudden shock struck her and the frightened expression on her face was replaced by wordless rage. I continued, still apologizing. I didn't mean for this to happen. It's just that you were away so often and I got lonely. How dare you do this to me, Alan? After all I've done for you, who is she? I assume you're entertaining her. Blah blah blah. I just sat there with a sorrowful face while she poured a dregs of water on me for about 5 minutes. I can see that you're very angry, and that's understandable. It's pointless to continue the conversation now. I'll come back tomorrow around 4 o'clock in the afternoon to talk some more. We have a lot to discuss. I left that tirade and walked back to my new home. A string of angry text messages and voicemails followed me. I didn't bother to respond. Back home, everyone was wondering how it went. My response, even better than expected. For dinner we had pizza and watched a movie together. The girls turned off their phones to avoid communicating with their mother, even though I made it clear to them that they could not cut off contact with her. Why didn't I attack her for her cheating? Because it would have hurt her so much more that way. That night Sophie and I made tender love. All my anxiety and tension just melted away. Anywho, the next afternoon I showed up at my old place, armed with a folder of papers. I was greeted by a still very annoyed Amy, along with her best friend Claire, who was a lawyer and whom I had never liked. I saw old emails where Claire had encouraged Amy to continue the affair in the early days when Amy was feeling guilty and thinking about breaking up. I sat down at the table facing both of them. Claire appeared to be the spokesperson, and offense was the best form of defense. She proceeded to tell me at length what an asshole I was and what a wonderful wife and mother Amy was. How I had taken advantage of her while she was away and worked so hard for the family. How I should beg her to come back. If I didn't, she would clean me out in the divorce, take the girls, and I would never see them again. What hypocrites. After last night, they apparently decided that if I knew about her affair with her boss, I would have brought it up. I kept a sad, apologetic, and questioning look on my face. Amy, I realize how much this hurts you, but I guess I'm a little surprised that you're so angry. For quite some time I haven't felt like you really loved me. You've been physically and emotionally absent from our marriage for the last 3 years. That's utter nonsense, Alan. Of course I've been around. I know I work hard, which often distracts me from my work, but I did it for us. So tell me, Amy, when was the last time we made love? Amy remained silent. I can tell you it was 3 years ago. Yes, we have sex very rarely, but I was talking about making love. I can tell you the exact date of the last time. Remember, 3 years ago you were away on a business trip and forgot to call Emma on her 11th birthday. She tried to call you several times throughout the evening but never got through. She was so upset. I remember it well because Emma's birthday was 2 weeks ago when you were on a business trip and you forgot to call her again. So I thought it was a bad anniversary for us. She threw me a guilty look. Ever since you came home from that trip 3 years ago, somehow our relationship has never been the same. I've always wondered why that's the case. I realized from the look on their faces that I had hit the mark. They looked very uncomfortable and squinted at each other. After all, Amy, we've been sleeping in separate bedrooms for about 6 months now. It doesn't seem to bother you. I can't remember the last time we went out together or went on vacation. Feels like you spend your vacations at work. They both shuddered. When you're home, you're not here with me and your girls. I smiled inwardly as I watched them squirm in their seats. Anyway, Amy, I'm sorry, but I'm going to move on with my life, and I hope for the girls' sake we can make our separation as easy as possible. Reconciliation is really impossible. Who is she? Do I know her? You've met her daughter Callie, Emma's best friend, a few times. Her mom Sophie and I met at Saturday soccer last year and became friends. I think our friendship grew until we realized we were in love with each other. We had an affair and recently decided to move in together. Before they could say anything else, I placed a large index folder on the table. I've gathered some documents and information for you. Tab A is the separation agreement I filed with the court 2 weeks ago. Tab B is the divorce petition you need to sign. The sooner you sign, the sooner we can move forward. Tab C is the proposed financial settlement. Tab D is the new lease on this house. The lease expires in 3 weeks, so you will have to renew it in your name if you want to stay. Tab D is all the utility contracts. I gave notice to terminate the agreement in 3 weeks. If you want to stay, you will have to renew them in your name. Tab E bank statements. I have withdrawn 60% of the funds from our joint accounts. The credit cards in your name now belong to you. Finally, Tab F is a temporary court order for custody and child support. The girls have decided to move in with me, so custody will be handled by me. Child support will be paid directly from your paycheck at work. Access to visitation has been left open so we can work this out as we see fit. They were stunned that I was so well prepared. Claire began, "You bastard, you've been planning this for ages. You're not going to get away with this. We're going to take your IT company, your girls, and your money." "Well, yeah, I've been planning this since Christmas. I had a waking moment at your staff Christmas party, Amy. I realized it was over between us and it was time to act." I watched Amy frantically trying to remember what had happened there. "So selling the house to buy another was a sham," Claire said. I only smiled. "As for screwing me, Claire, I don't have a company to take over. I closed it down a few months ago. I work for someone else now. I bought a new house for Sophie to live in after I filed for legal separation, so it's not an asset to our marriage. Since I have legal custody of the girls, I can use 60% of the money from the sale of the house to buy a new home. So I'm not sure what you can really do, Claire. By the way, if you research state laws, you'll find that once the children turn 14, they can choose who they want to live with. They chose me. You really are nothing, Alan. I bet you poisoned the girls' minds against Amy. I wouldn't do that. I'm not such a scoundrel. Anyway, even if I thought I should poison them, it wouldn't have been necessary. Amy did it herself, having neglected them for the last 3 years. You have a lot of work to do with them, Amy, to get them back. It's important for their well-being that they have a good relationship with their mother. She hasn't neglected them. She's a good mother. It's not what they think, Claire. She's been virtually absent from their lives for years. Amy, ask yourself who feeds them, who takes them to sports, who makes their school lunches, who helps them with their homework, who buys them clothes, who always remembers their birthdays and buys them presents, who goes to the movies with them, who they go to with problems, who help them get through their first period, who gives them love and affection. I could go on and on. Well, Amy fell silent. It was obvious that she was having a hard time digesting what had happened. The girls asked me to ask if you would meet them tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at the beachside cafe. It was actually my idea since they don't really want to meet you. I'll tell them it's okay. She only nodded. I left them both and went back to my family. The next day, the girls told me that Amy kept badmouthing me and demanding that they live with her. Eventually, the girls excused themselves to go to the bathroom and just quietly left. I couldn't understand why she wanted to make up. She had been indifferent to me for years. Maybe I was just a convenient babysitter and housekeeper for her. Amy, the aftermath. When Alan told me he was leaving me for another woman, I was in complete shock. How could he? I thought he loved me. Despite several attempts to talk to him about reconciliation, he wanted nothing to do with me, and we only communicated when we picked up and dropped off my daughters for visits. My girls were openly feuding with me, and the time spent with them was unpleasant. When I left them at home after a visit, they would happily run to their new stepmother and hug her to purposely piss me off. Eventually, I told them not to come to my house unless they wanted to themselves. I had always envisioned my life continuing as it had before, with my lover to pleasure me on the road and my husband to take care of me at home. The shock and emotional devastation of Alan actually leaving me was immense. Several months passed, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that while it was a huge surprise, it wasn't meant to be. Alan was right. I had been an absent wife in many ways. For the last 3 years I had concentrated all my love, all my emotional intimacy on Dan. There was almost nothing left for him. I realized that the only real surprise was that he stayed so long. I couldn't afford my house payment and child support, so I had to move into a tiny old apartment. I spent nights at home alone watching TV and eating crappy takeout food. Dan's attitude also changed when Alan left me. He was suddenly too busy with his family to spend much time with me, even though I was now a free woman and always available. He sent me on business trips alone more and more often, telling me that I could handle the clients on my own now. When we were together, the emotional connection seemed to disappear. About 6 months into the marriage breakup, Dan announced that he was quitting his job and moving to another firm in another city. I tearfully asked him to never contact me again. In the blink of an eye, I became a divorced woman. I couldn't help but think of a line from a Joni Mitchell song. Doesn't it seem like you don't know what you've got until it's gone? I foolishly thought I could have my cake and eat it too. Nor did it help my confidence that Alan was now with a gorgeous woman who was so sweet it was impossible to hate her. He was outright glowing with happiness with his new partner. I remember he looked the same way with me when we were young parents trying to raise 2 kids. No matter what challenges we faced, we fought together to overcome them and were happy and in love. How could I have let that crumble? My 2 girls seemed much happier too. They treated Sophie as their mother, not me. I was just an annoying relic of their past that they were forced to visit occasionally. It was very painful. I think I hit rock bottom when I complained to my girls about my situation. Lauren looked at me coldly. So, did you leave your father after all? I know I wasn't the perfect wife and was a little neglectful of all of you, but he was the one who left me for another woman. Mom, he left you because you had an affair with your boss for 3 years. The look of horror on my face said it all. I was so ashamed. Alan had known all along, but he hadn't said anything. My life reeked of booze. I had really screwed up, left a good husband, and lost my daughters. True to his word, Alan advised our girls to keep in touch with me. He was right. I had a lot of work to do to get them back. Gradually, they began to come to me without compulsion, and sometimes they even stayed overnight. One evening, as I drove the girls to their new home, I asked Alan if we could have a little chat. He got out of the car with me. I turned to face him. Lauren told me you know about Dan and me. I'm really sorry, Alan. You've been a good husband, and you didn't deserve anything from me. I was just an ungrateful, selfish bitch and I got what I deserved. He only nodded. Why didn't you tell me you knew Alan? Maybe you could have stopped me early enough to save our marriage. By the time I found out, it was too late for that. When did you find out? I caught you with your boss when you snuck out together at the office Christmas party last year. I didn't say I saw you. After that, I did some digging and found out everything you two have been up to. I blushed thickly. I was so embarrassed. I have to admit, it really amused me when you were stuck in Bali by yourself. Oh God, I feel so miserable. You must hate me. So why didn't you confront me face to face? I was very angry with you and wanted you to feel my resentment and get a little revenge. I did some investigating and found out that you're not the first secretary your boss has slept with. He actually has quite a history of grabbing and dumping. I decided that the best way to you was to just keep quiet and let events unfold. Knowing his past, I figured that if your affair remained a secret, he would probably keep you in suspense for a while, and then eventually get tired of you and dump you for someone new. I was afraid that if I made a big scene, his wife would find out and divorce him. Then he would be free to be with you and you would probably go unpunished. I also figured you'd feel a lot worse if you thought I just left you for another woman. I must say that your strategy worked perfectly. You definitely got your revenge, Alan. My life has turned to shit. I guess in hindsight, I'm sorry you were hurt so badly. Well, to be honest, a little sorry. You don't need to apologize. It was my fault. I would have walked away from you if you had done what I did. In hindsight, I was just seduced by the excitement and got addicted to it. I tried to stop in the early days, but by then it was too late. I became so obsessed with it and consumed by my desires that I just forgot about you and my girls for a while. My anger has passed now, Amy, and I do forgive you. I've also become more philosophical about it. After all, I wouldn't be with Sophie now if you hadn't cheated on me. Yes, I know that's what hurts the most. Our marriage was difficult from the beginning, Sophie, so I don't think you're a bad person at all. Yes, you made a really big mistake, but he was a master seducer. You didn't get a chance to grow up properly, enjoy all the normal things teenagers do, and especially dating and figuring out who you really wanted to spend the rest of your life with. You weren't ripe for the picking and your boss picked you. You're probably right, Ellen, but why did you have to tell the girls about him? It was too cruel. No wonder they hated me. I didn't tell them, Amy. They told me. What? How? They both came back to our old house unexpectedly and caught you two in the living room. Remember right after we moved our stuff out? At first I couldn't remember, and then I remembered with horror. What did they see? Pretty much everything, even Emma. Lauren described the event to me in quite a bit of detail. My whole body felt like it had fallen under and I started sobbing heartily, not paying attention to anything around me. I don't know how long I cried, but I realized that Alan had his arms wrapped around me, supporting me and holding me tightly against him, my head buried in his chest. The familiar feeling and smell made me burst into tears again. I was picked up in his arms and carried into the house and laid on the couch. I felt so awful. Everyone, including Alan's new partner Sophie, was so sweet and caring. She insisted I stay to calm down, and when I came to my senses, insisted I stay for dinner. Sitting at the table with his new family, Alan looked so happy. I had really messed things up. As I walked out to the car that evening, he put both hands on my shoulders. Amy, I don't want you to keep berating yourself and being miserable. We had a very rough start in life when we were too young to become parents and commit to each other for the rest of our lives. If you think about it, the most amazing thing is that our marriage has lasted this long, 14 years. It's a credit to both of us. Look at the positives. Our two mistakes resulted in two adorable daughters, whom we raised into two wonderful young women. It's a fantastic legacy of our marriage that can never be taken away. You're right, Alan. Speaking of mistakes, I have to say I've made another one. Sophie is pregnant, so we're getting married sooner than expected. You seem to be very prone to mistakes. You are a good man and a good husband, Alan, better than I deserved. I wish you well. I gave him a hug and a kiss on the cheek and then left. My seat was indeed taken. I hoped I could find another man as good as him, but there was little chance. Epilogue. Alan. Why did I forgive her so easily? For several reasons. Because hate can consume you and make you bitter. Because she was still being punished regularly just by seeing me with Sophie. I had loved her once too, and our bond remained intact no matter what. Although I wanted to punish Amy, my real revenge was directed at her boss Dan, who had once seduced her and led her away from me. I hacked into his computer, sending him an email that looked like it came from Amy. It contained a hidden Trojan horse that gave me full access to everything. I discovered that he had been quietly and cleverly embezzling money from his former employer, and was now playing the same game with his new employer. I collected a lot of evidence and sent it anonymously to both employers and to the police. At his trial, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. His wife supported him throughout the trial, and then visited him in prison with his children. I went to see her and showed her incriminating evidence of his numerous affairs. She was furious and decided to dump him on the spot. To complete my revenge, I visited Dan in prison. He didn't recognize me at first. Hi Dan, we've met before. I'm Amy's ex-husband. What the hell do you want, asshole? To give you messages. The first one is from my ex-wife Amy. She sends her regards and hopes you're enjoying your new home that I personally helped you set up. What? You really should have called in the professionals to encrypt your computer. After I hacked into it, it only took me 15 minutes to unlock everything. I just couldn't resist sending it all to the police. After he stopped swearing at me, I said, I hope you don't mind, but I also visited your wife and took the liberty of showing her all those compromising photos and videos I found of you and your girlfriends. I must say that she was very angry with you. She insisted that we get revenge and I couldn't refuse. I don't know why she wasn't enough for you. Nonsense. She wanted me to show you this. I spread the pictures in front of him. Sure, they've been doctored with Photoshop, but he didn't know that. She said to tell you that she'll never visit you here again, and you'll never see your children again. I gave her the name of my lawyer who is going to divorce your sorry ass. The look on his face was priceless. Yes, revenge is indeed a dish best served cold. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.